The waiting room fell silent as 19-year-old Emma collapsed onto the cold hospital floor. Her father's harsh words still ringing in her ears. "Stop being so dramatic, it's probably just stress from that art school you insisted on attending." 3 days later, as the oncologist confirmed stage 3 lymphoma, Emma watched her father's face crumble. The man who had dismissed every symptom now broken by 4 simple words. It spread quite aggressively. What happens when the person meant to protect you becomes the one who refuses to see your pain? This story of healing goes beyond cancer. It's about a father learning that some wounds cut deeper than disease, and a daughter discovering that forgiveness can be the most powerful medicine of all. If this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and share your own experiences with illness or family healing in the comments below. Emma stared at the ceiling tiles, counting the tiny holes as the technician slid her into the MRI machine. Counting had always calmed her, even as a child. 1, 2, 3. The machine hummed to life. She closed her eyes and tried to ignore the cold sweat breaking out across her forehead. Her father, Robert, sat in the waiting room, scrolling through work emails. In the 3 days since Emma's collapse, he'd barely looked away from his phone. Maybe it was easier than looking at her. Easier than acknowledging what they both feared. "Mr. Collins," the doctor's voice made Robert jump. "We have some initial results. Could you come with me, please?" Emma sat perched on the edge of the examination table when her father entered the consultation room. Her thin fingers nervously traced the paper covering beneath her. Dr. Patel stood near the lightbox. X-rays and scans illuminated. "I wish I had better news," Dr. Patel began, her voice gentle but direct. "The blood work, the imaging, they're consistent with lymphoma. Stage 3. Emma nodded slightly, as if she'd known all along. In truth, she had. The night sweats that left her sheets soaked. The bruises that appeared without cause. The bone-deep fatigue that made climbing a single flight of stairs feel like scaling a mountain. Lymphoma, Robert's voice cracked. That's cancer." "Yes, it's a type of blood cancer that affects the lymphatic system," Dr. Patel explained. "And in Emma's case, it spread quite aggressively." Those 4 words hit Robert like a physical blow. He stumbled backward, groping for the chair behind him. Emma watched her father's face crumble, the stoic mask he'd worn for days, for years, really finally shattering. "But she's only 19, he whispered, as if Emma's age might somehow disqualify her from diagnosis. Dr. Patel outlined the treatment plan. Aggressive chemotherapy, possibly radiation, then reassessment. She spoke about oncology teams and success rates. Emma listened, oddly detached, watching her father instead. "Mr. Collins, are you all right?" Dr. Patel asked. Robert looked up, his face ashen. "I told her it was just stress," he said, his voice hollow. "I told her to stop being dramatic." Emma looked away, uncomfortable with her father's rare display of emotion. She'd spent years trying to get him to see her, really see her. Now that he was looking, she wasn't sure she wanted him to. "We'll start treatment immediately," Dr. Patel continued. "Emma, I know this is overwhelming, but I need you to focus on getting rest and staying positive. Your mental state matters tremendously." As they left the hospital, Robert placed his hand on Emma's shoulder, the first gentle touch she'd felt from him in years. "Emma, he started. "Don't," she interrupted. "Just don't say anything right now." The drive home was silent, save for the occasional direction from the GPS. Emma leaned her forehead against the cool window glass, watching raindrops race down the pane, thinking how quickly life could change, course like water diverted by the slightest obstacle. Robert gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles whitened. Every few minutes, he'd glance at his daughter, opening his mouth to speak before thinking better of it. They were strangers now, separated by more than just the center console of his Mercedes, separated by years of missed connections and, now, by 4 simple words. It spread quite aggressively. Emma had always been her mother's daughter. She inherited Sarah's artistic temperament, her expressive eyes, and her inability to keep opinions to herself. Robert had loved those qualities in his wife, but found them maddening in his daughter. When Emma was 12, Sarah was diagnosed with an aggressive form of breast cancer. 6 months later, she was gone. The Collins household, once filled with Sarah's laughter and impromptu dance parties, fell silent. Robert retreated into work, building his investment firm into a financial powerhouse. Success became his sanctuary. Numbers made sense. Feelings didn't. Emma, meanwhile, disappeared into her sketchbooks, creating worlds where her mother still existed. "Dad, look what I made," 13-year-old Emma had said one evening, holding up a portrait of her mother drawn from memory. Robert had glanced at it briefly. "That's nice. Did you finish your math homework?" Emma learned to stop showing him her art. By 16, Emma had transformed their garage into a makeshift studio. Robert complained about the mess, but never actually entered the space. It became her sanctuary, the one place her father wouldn't follow. When college application season arrived, Robert had spreadsheets of business schools and their ROI. Emma had a portfolio of paintings and a single dream: Westwood Institute of Fine Arts. "Art isn't a career, Emma," Robert had insisted. "It's a hobby. It's who I am," she'd countered. The argument lasted months. When Emma received her acceptance letter and scholarship offer from Westwood, Robert finally relented, though not without a parting shot. "When you're waiting tables with an art degree, don't say I didn't warn you." Emma moved into the dorms despite Westwood being only 30 minutes from home. Their relationship settled into a pattern of brief phone calls and obligatory holiday gatherings. Then came the symptoms. First, the fatigue she attributed to late nights in the studio. Then the bruises she blamed on bumping into easels. When the night sweats began, she ignored those too. It was her roommate who finally insisted she see the campus doctor. "This isn't normal, Em," Zoe had said, pointing to a particularly nasty bruise on Emma's arm. "Promise me you'll go tomorrow." The campus doctor recommended blood tests. When the results came back, she suggested Emma see a specialist and bring someone with you. She'd advised. Emma had hesitated before calling her father. It had been nearly 3 weeks since they'd spoken. "Dad, I need to go to University Hospital for some tests," she'd explained. "The doctor said I should bring someone." "Tests for what?" Robert had asked. "Probably just anemia or something," she'd lied. The doctor's concerned expression had suggested much worse. "Can't your roommate take you? I have meetings all day." "Never mind," Emma had said. "I'll go alone." She hadn't expected him to show up at her dorm the next morning, coffee in hand. "Let's go," he'd said gruffly. "Your health is more important than my meetings." For a moment, Emma had felt like maybe things could be different between them. Then he'd spent the entire drive lecturing her about taking better care of herself, about the importance of proper nutrition, about how art students worked themselves too hard for no practical purpose. By the time they'd reached the hospital waiting room, Emma was exhausted from more than just her illness. When the dizziness hit and her father dismissed it with, "Stop being so dramatic," something inside her had finally broken, and then she had collapsed, the cold floor tiles pressing against her cheek as the world went dark. The oncology ward was painted a soft yellow that reminded Emma of watered-down sunshine. She sat in a recliner, watching clear liquid drip from the biobag into her arm. The port they'd surgically implanted beneath her collarbone still felt foreign, like something from a sci-fi movie rather than a part of her body. Robert sat across from her, pretending to read a financial magazine, while actually watching her every breath. She'd caught him Googling lymphoma survival rates on his phone earlier. His face had gone pale at whatever he'd found. "You don't have to stay," Emma said, breaking the silence. "This takes hours." "I'm staying," Robert replied, his tone leaving. No room for argument. An elderly woman in the next recliner smiled at them. "First treatment?" she asked kindly. Emma nodded. "The first one's the scariest," the woman said. "I'm on round 8. It gets easier." 8 rounds. Robert interjected, anxiety sharpening his voice. "How many will Emma need?" The nurse checking Emma's IV shot Robert a warning look. "Everyone's treatment plan is different. Mr. Collins, Dr. Patel discussed Emma's particular protocol with you both." Robert nodded stiffly, but Emma could see the questions multiplying behind his eyes. He'd always been a man who needed to know everything, to control every variable. Cancer didn't work that way. Halfway through the infusion, Emma felt the nausea rising. The nurse had warned her this might happen. She gripped the armrests, breathing slowly through her nose. "Are you okay?" Robert asked, leaning forward. "Should I call someone?" "I'm fine," Emma managed, though she was anything but. When she finally vomited into the plastic basin the nurse had left just in case, Robert looked more terrified than she'd ever seen him. "This is normal," the nurse assured him as she helped clean Emma up. "The anti-nausea meds take time to find the right balance." By the time they left the hospital, Emma could barely walk. Robert helped her into the car, his hands gentle but awkward, as if he'd forgotten how to offer comfort. At home, he hovered as she made her way to her bedroom. "Can I get you anything? Water? Tea?" "Just sleep," Emma mumbled, collapsing onto her bed. She woke hours later to find a glass of water, crackers, and a small stuffed bear on her nightstand. The bear was worn, one ear slightly frayed Mr. Buttons. Her childhood comfort toy. She hadn't seen him in years. Downstairs, she found her father surrounded by printouts, medical journals, clinical trial results, alternative treatment options. "I've been researching," he explained, gesturing at the papers. "There's a specialist in Boston who's had remarkable success with cases like yours. Dad and I have set up a consultation with a nutritionist who works specifically with cancer patients. Diet is crucial during chemo." "Dad, please." "Oh, and I called Westwood. They have a medical leave policy. You can withdraw from this semester without penalty." "What?" Emma's voice sharpened. "I'm not withdrawing." Robert frowned. "Emma, be reasonable. You need to focus on recovery." "Art school is not negotiable," she said firmly. "I'll work with my professors. Most of my credits this semester are studio hours anyway." "This isn't the time for stubbornness," Robert countered. "Your health has to come first." "My life has to come first," Emma corrected him. "And art is my life." They stared at each other, at an impasse once again. Emma saw the fear behind his. Controlling behavior, but that didn't make it easier to bear. "One day at a time," she finally said, softening slightly. "Today, I'm going back to bed. Tomorrow, we'll talk about how I can keep up with my coursework while doing treatment." Robert watched her climb the stairs, Mr. Buttons clutched in her hand. When she was out of sight, he buried his face in his hands, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Emma was dozing when the knock came. She opened her eyes to see her father standing awkwardly in the doorway. "You have a visitor," he said. "Professor Claude." "Claudia said she's your art teacher." Emma sat up too quickly, making her head spin. "Professor Claudia is here." Professor Claudia Santiago was everything Robert Collins was not. Warm, expressive, and unapologetically bohemian. She swept into Emma's bedroom carrying a large canvas tote bag, her silver-streaked black hair piled into a messy bun, bracelets jangling at her wrists. "My brilliant Emma," she said, leaning down to kiss both of Emma's cheeks. "When you missed critique, I knew something was wrong. You never miss critique. Robert hovered in the doorway, frowning slightly at this whirlwind of a woman who seemed so familiar with his daughter. Your father tells me you're planning to continue your studies, Claudia said, settling onto the edge of Emma's bed. Good art heals. Art doesn't cure cancer, Robert interjected. Claudia turned, seeming to really notice him for the first time. Mr. Collins, I presume, you have your daughter's eyes. She looked back at Emma. Though yours see more. Robert stiffened. I'll leave you two to talk. Emma, don't overexert yourself. When he was gone, Claudia began unpacking her tote, sketchbooks, pencils, a small watercolor set, and a collection of art postcards. Hospital rooms are depressing, she declared. Too much white, no texture. She handed Emma a sketchbook. This is your medicine now, along with whatever they're pumping into you. Emma ran her fingers over the high-quality paper. I can't go to studio classes, so we bring the studio to you. Claudia shrugged. Frida Kahlo created her most powerful work from her sickbed. Your circumstances have changed, not your talent. When Robert returned with tea, he found Emma sitting up, sketchbook on her lap, while Claudia gestured animatedly about composition. The hospital becomes your subject, Claudia was saying. The 4 bags, the monitors, the faces of your nurses transform them. Robert set the tea tray down harder than necessary. Emma needs rest, not homework. Dad, Emma warned. Claudia studied Robert for a moment. Mr. Collins, what does your daughter's artwork tell you? Robert hesitated. I'm not sure I understand the question. Have you truly looked at what she creates? Not just seen it, but looked. Robert shifted uncomfortably. Emma knows I support her interests. Interests, Claudia repeated. Like stamp collecting or fantasy football, not a calling. Emma interrupted before her father could respond. Professor, could you bring my portfolio from the studio? I'd like to work on the series I started last month. Claudia's expression softened. The memory pieces, of course. After Claudia left, promising to return with Emma's work, Robert remained standing by the window. She seems intense, he said finally. She believes in me, Emma replied. As an artist, I believe in you too. As a daughter, it's not the same. The next day, when Emma was feeling stronger, she sat at the kitchen table with her new sketchbook. The simple act of drawing made her feel more like herself, even as the chemo made her body feel foreign. She didn't notice her father watching from the doorway, as she sketched not until she heard his sharp intake of breath. She'd been drawing him, his face half in shadow, lines of worry etched around his mouth. Is that how you see me? He asked quietly. Emma studied her drawing. It's just a sketch. But they both knew it was more. In a few precise lines, she'd captured not just his appearance, but his emotional isolation, the wall he'd built around himself since her mother died. That evening, as Emma rested, Robert found himself drawn to the sketchbook she'd left on the table. He hesitated before opening it, feeling like an intruder. Inside, he found page after page of hospital scenes transformed. 4 tubes becoming tree roots. Heart monitors displaying mountain ranges instead of heartbeats. A nurse's kind smile rendered in exquisite detail. The last sketch was of him again, standing alone in a crowded waiting room, phone in hand, disconnected from everyone around him. When Professor Claudia returned the following day with Emma's portfolio, Robert greeted her with less hostility. She's resting, he said. The chemo hit hard yesterday. Claudia nodded. It will, but she's stronger than you know. A visual journal Professor Claudia suggested during her 3rd visit, placing a leather-bound book in Emma's hands. Unlike her usual sketchbooks, this one had thick, mixed media pages. Document everything, the physical changes, yes, but more importantly, what's happening in here. She tapped Emma's chest lightly. Like a diary? Emma asked, turning the blank pages. More raw than that. No need for complete sentences or pretty pictures, just truth. That night, Emma stared at the first empty page. How to capture the churning mess inside her. Finally, she began with color-angry red slashes across the cream paper, then black spirals tightening toward the center. She collaged hospital bracelets and medication labels, wrote fragments of overheard conversations from the oncology ward. On one page, she pressed a small lock of her hair, knowing soon there would be none left. The journal became her confidant. When the nausea kept her awake, she worked by lamplight, documenting her changing body and fractured emotions. She created a 2-page spread titled Things My Father Cannot Say, filling it with all the words she longed to hear from him. Some entries were pure abstraction, her pain transformed into jagged lines and harsh colors. Others were startlingly literal, her bathroom scale showing another 5 pounds lost, the bruise-like shadows deepening under her eyes. 3 weeks into treatment, Emma left her journal on the kitchen counter while making tea. When she returned, it was gone. She found her father in his study, the journal open in his lap. His face was ashen. "That's private," Emma said quietly, her heart pounding. Robert looked up, his eyes red-rimmed. "Is this really how you feel?" He was staring at a page where she'd written in large, shaky letters, "The cancer is killing my body, but his silence killed me years ago." "You had no right," Emma whispered, snatching the journal away. "Emma, no. You don't get to invade my privacy, and then act wounded by what you find." "I didn't know," Robert said, his voice breaking. "I didn't realize how much I've hurt you." Emma clutched the journal to her chest like a shield. "What did you think would happen when you dismissed everything that matters to me? When you couldn't even look at my art because it reminded you to?" "Much of Mom," Robert flinched as if she'd struck him. "That's not it. You shut down after she died. You shut me out, and when I got sick, your first instinct was to tell me I was being dramatic." The words rushed out, years of bottled pain, finally finding release. "Do you know what that feels like? To have the person who's supposed to protect you refuse to see your pain?" She was crying now, tears splashing onto the journal's leather cover. Robert stood, reaching toward her, then let his hand fall. "I'm sorry," he said simply. Emma shook her head. "Sorry doesn't fix this." That night, she added a new entry to her journal. Below a stark self-portrait, she wrote, "Today, my father finally saw me. I'm not sure if it changes anything." The next morning, she found a note slipped under her door. In her father's precise handwriting, "I have no excuse for how I failed you. Your mother would be ashamed of me. She would also be incredibly proud of you, your talent, your courage, your honesty. I don't know how to bridge this gulf between us, but I want to try. Perhaps you could show me how." At the bottom of the page, he'd attempted to draw something, a small, awkward sketch of what might have been two people, standing together. Emma traced the childlike drawing with her finger. Then she opened her journal to a new page and began to respond not with words, but with an image of two people separated by a chasm, with the barest beginning of a bridge between them. Emma's 4th round of chemo required an overnight stay for monitoring. Her private room lasted exactly 2 hours before the nursing supervisor appeared. "We have a new patient who needs monitoring," she explained. "Would you mind sharing? He's only 17, Kai-Chen." Before Emma could answer, a wheelchair appeared. In the doorway, the boy in it was rail-thin, with a shock of blue hair and a hospital gown decorated with spacecraft stickers. Despite his pallor, his smile was electric. "Sup," he said, raising a hand covered in colorful string bracelets. "I'm your new roomie. Hope you don't snore." Kai had osteosarcoma bone cancer in his left leg. "Tried to save it," he explained. matter-of-factly as a nurse helped him into bed. But looks like me and Lefty are parting ways next week. Amputation party. You're invited. Emma blinked at his bluntness. I'm sorry, Kai shrugged. Better than the alternative, right? Plus, I've already picked out my prosthetic. Totally badass. Carbon fiber. His parents arrived shortly after his mother with homemade dumplings, his father carrying a portable game console. They fussed over Kai, but there was no pity in their eyes, only fierce love. You must be Emma, Mrs. Chen said, offering her a dumpling. Kai manners introduce us properly. Mum, Dad, this is Emma. She makes amazing art. Been creeping on your sketchbook, he added to Emma with a grin. Hope that's cool. Emma found herself smiling back. It's cool. When Robert arrived that evening with Emma's overnight bag, he found her sitting cross-legged on Kai's bed, teaching him to sketch. You're pressing too hard, she was saying. Lighten your touch. That's what all the ladies tell me, Kai quipped, then noticed Robert. Whoa, Emma, your dad's here. Act cool. Robert stood awkwardly in the doorway until Emma waved him in. Dad, this is Kai. He's getting his leg amputated next week. Way to bury the lead, Collins. Kai laughed. I'm also the reigning Hospital Uno champion and future Paralympic snowboarder. Nice to meet you, Robert said, clearly unsure how to respond to Kai's irreverence. Mr. and Mrs. Chen returned from the cafeteria, introducing themselves warmly. Join us for dinner, Mrs. Chen offered. Hospital food is terrible. We brought real food. To Emma's surprise, her father accepted, pulling up a chair. For the next hour, the small room was filled with conversation and laughter. Kai told outrageous stories about his battle scars, while his parents gently corrected his exaggerations. Emma watched her father gradually relax, even smiling at Kai's worst jokes. When Mrs. Chen mentioned Kai's upcoming surgery, her voice broke slightly. We're scared, Mr. Chen admitted, his arm around his wife. But Kai reminds us to focus on what we'll still have, not what we're losing. Kai rolled his eyes, getting deep again. Dad. Embarrassing. But Emma saw how he reached for his mother's hand, squeezing it gently. Later, after the Chens left and Kai dozed off, Robert lingered by Emma's bedside. He's quite a character, he said quietly. Yeah, his prognosis is worse than mine. Did you know that? But he's so ... alive, Robert finished. Completely present. His parents, too. They're not pretending it isn't happening, but they're not letting it swallow them either. Robert was silent for a long moment. I haven't been present for you, he finally said. Not since your mother died. Maybe not even before that. Emma didn't deny it. In the dim light of the hospital room, with Kai's soft snores as background, truth seemed easier. I'm trying to learn, Robert continued. From you, from them. He nodded toward Kai. I've been so afraid of losing you that I missed seeing who you are. I'm still here, Dad, Emma said softly. Still fighting, I know, he replied. And I'm going to fight alongside you now, not against you. When Robert left, Emma added a new entry to her Junola sketch of Kai surrounded by his loving parents, with Robert watching from the periphery. A student of connection rather than its teacher, Dr. Patel's expression told Emma everything before a single word was spoken. The latest scan results were spread across the desk between them. The lymphoma isn't responding as well as we'd hoped, she explained gently. The tumors have shrunk, but not significantly enough. Robert leaned forward. What does that mean? We need to be more aggressive. Different medications. It means we need to adjust our approach, Dr. Patel said. I'd like to try a more intensive chemotherapy regimen, combined with targeted immunotherapy. Emma stared at the scan, images ghostly shadows lurking in her chest and neck, enemies refusing to retreat. Will I lose more hair? She asked, touching the few remaining wisps at her temples. Dr. Patel's smile was kind but honest. I'm afraid so. But remember, it's temporary. On the drive home, Robert scrolled through his phone at red lights, already researching the new medications. We should get a second opinion, he said. Maybe that specialist in Boston. And I've been reading about clinical trials, Dad. Please. Emma leaned her head against the window. Not now. At home, Robert's anxiety manifested as action. He rearranged Emma's room for better feng shui, ordered organic meal deliveries, and set reminders for every medication. Emma retreated to her art. Despite her fatigue, she found herself drawn to her sketchbook with renewed urgency. The images poured out darker now, more visceral, her body as a battlefield, cancer cells as invading armies. One evening, Robert found her slumped over her desk, pencil still in hand. Emma, you need to rest, he insisted, helping her to bed. The art can wait. No, it can't, she murmured, but allowed herself to be tucked in. The next day, she woke to find her art supplies missing from her desk. Where's my sketchbook? She demanded, finding her father in the kitchen. I moved everything downstairs, Robert explained. You need to conserve your energy. Dr. Patel said, I don't care what Dr. Patel said about my energy. Emma's voice rose. My art isn't negotiable. Emma, be reasonable. You were exhausted yesterday. The new treatment is going to be even harder on your body. So what am I supposed to do? Lie in bed and stare at the ceiling, thinking about cancer? Robert ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident. I'm trying to help you focus on getting well, by taking away the one thing that makes me feel like myself. Emma shot back. The one thing that helps me process what's happening. I'm trying to save your life. Robert shouted. What life are you saving if you take away everything that makes me want to live? The words hung between them, sharp and irretrievable. Robert stepped back as if she'd physically struck him. Emma, no, she cut him off, suddenly tired again. You don't get it. You still don't get it. This isn't about being stubborn or difficult. It's about survival, not just of my body, but of me. She moved past him to the living room, where she found her art supplies neatly stacked on the coffee table. Gathering them into her arms, she turned back to her father. I know you're scared, she said more quietly. I'm scared too, but controlling everything around you won't change what's happening. Mum taught me that. At the mention of Sarah, Robert's shoulders slumped. I couldn't save her, he admitted, his voice barely audible. I don't know if I can save you either. That's not your job, Emma said gently. Your job is to be here with me, whatever happens, to see me not just the cancer, not just the daughter you want me to be, but me, as I am. She carried her supplies back upstairs, leaving her father standing alone in the kitchen, finally beginning to understand the difference between protecting someone and truly supporting them. The more aggressive treatment protocol meant more time in the hospital. Emma's nights were restless, disrupted by vital sign checks and the hiss-click of 4 pumps. During her 3rd night, she met Michael, the overnight nurse. Tall and soft-spoken, with a sleeve of colorful tattoos, he moved with quiet efficiency. Can't sleep? He asked, finding her awake at 3 a.m. Emma shook her head. Everything hurts, and my mind won't shut up. Michael nodded understandingly. Night. Thoughts are the loudest. He checked her for, then hesitated. Want to see something cool? He led her to the nurse's station, where a small terrarium glowed softly. Inside, tiny succulents created a miniature landscape. My little world, Michael explained, brings a bit of life to this place. Emma studied the meticulous arrangement. It's beautiful. Helps me remember there's still growth happening, even in sterile places. He tapped the glass gently. even when we can't see it. When he escorted Emma back to her room, he noticed her journal on the bedside table. You're an artist. Trying to be, that's good. Art saved me when I was where you are. Emma looked up sharply. You had cancer. Michael rolled up his sleeve, revealing a port scar similar to hers. Hodgkin's lymphoma. 15 years ago, when I was 22. And you're okay now. Better than okay. His smile was genuine. Cancer taught me what matters. That's why I became a nurse, to be the person I needed when I was sick. Emma hugged her journal closer. My dad doesn't really understand. About the art, I mean. He thinks it's draining my energy. Parents struggle with control when their kids are sick, Michael said gently. It's their trauma response. When everything feels chaotic, they grab onto whatever they can manage. But it makes everything harder. Michael nodded. Want me to talk? To him, sometimes hearing it from another survivor helps. The next morning, Emma woke to find Michael and her father in quiet conversation by the window. She kept her eyes nearly closed, listening. I couldn't even look at her port at first. Robert was admitting. It made everything too real. That's normal, Michael assured him. But she needs you to see all of it, not just the parts you can handle. I'm trying. But watching her drain herself with these art projects, it scares me. Art isn't draining her energy, Mr. Collins. It's transmuting her fear. There's a difference. Robert was silent for a moment. When did you know you were going to be okay? Michael's response was careful. I didn't, until I was, but I knew I had a better chance if I stayed connected to what made me feel alive. And if it hadn't worked, if the treatment had failed, then I would have lived fully until the end, instead of putting my life on hold, waiting for permission to start again. Michael's voice was gentle but firm. Your daughter is an artist. That's not something to postpone until after cancer. It's how she processes cancer. Emma opened her eyes fully then, and both men turned toward her. Morning, sunshine, Michael said cheerfully, ready for breakfast. I smuggled in real coffee, don't tell management. As Michael left to get her food, Robert moved to Emma's bedside. How are you feeling? Tired? Sore? She studied his face. You've been talking about me. Michael was sharing some perspective. Robert hesitated. He showed me his port scar. He survived, Emma said. Just like I'm going to. I know. For the first time, Robert sounded like he actually believed it. Michael suggested something. A small studio space in the sunroom downstairs. So you don't have to climb stairs when you're tired, but you still have a dedicated place to work. Emma blinked in surprise. Really, really, and I thought, maybe you could teach me, not to be an artist, but to understand what you see when you create. It was the first time her father had ever expressed interest in her art as something other than a distraction, a small bridge forming across their chasm. I'd like that, Emma said softly. Emma had been prepared for hair loss intellectually, at least. Dr. Patel had warned her. Websites had explained the process clinically. But nothing prepared her for waking up to find her pillow covered in the last of her once thick brown curls. She sat on the bathroom floor, clumps of hair in her hands, and finally allowed herself to cry not delicate tears, but ugly, gasping sobs that echoed against the tile. Robert found her there 20 minutes later, still crying. Emma, he knelt beside her, unsure what to do. What can I? Don't say it's just hair, she interrupted, her voice raw. Don't tell me it'll grow back. I wasn't going to. He hesitated, then gently took the hair from her hands and set it aside. I was going to ask if you want me to shave the rest. Make it a choice, instead of something that's happening to you. Emma looked up, surprised by the offer. You'd do that, of course. His voice was soft, but steady. You don't have to go through this part alone. In the kitchen, Emma sat wrapped in a towel while Robert carefully ran the electric clippers over her scalp. Neither spoke as the last wisps fell away. When he finished, he handed her a mirror. Emma stared at her reflectional, sharp angles and vulnerability now, her eyes enormous in her thinning face. She looked alien to herself, like someone she'd sketch but never recognize. "I look like a cancer patient," she whispered. "You look like a warrior," Robert corrected, his voice unexpectedly fierce. Emma lowered the mirror, suddenly exhausted. "I don't feel very brave. Bravery isn't a feeling. It's continuing despite the fear." He began cleaning up the fallen hair. "Your mother taught me that." Back in her room, Emma avoided the mirror, pulling a soft beanie over her bare scalp. She tried to sketch, but found herself unable to focus, the pencil slipping from her fingers. A knock at her door roused her from a half-sleep. Robert stood in the doorway, something clutched in his hand. "I've been thinking," he said, stepping into the room. "It's not fair that you're going through this physical transformation alone." "What do you mean?" He opened his palm to reveal the electric clippers. "I thought maybe solidarity." Emma stared at him, her buttoned-up, appearance-conscious father who hadn't changed his haircut in 20 years. "You want to shave your head? If you'll do the honors." He held out the clippers. "Unless you think I have a weird-shaped skull, or something." For the first time in days, Emma laughed. "I've always suspected you might." They returned to the kitchen, roles reversed. Robert sat stiffly as Emma draped a towel around his shoulders. "You really don't have to do this," she said, clippers in hand. "I know." He met her eyes in the mirror. "I want to." Emma switched on the clippers, their buzzing filling the quiet kitchen. As the first strip of her father's salt and pepper hair fell away, she felt a surge of something unexpected power. Yes, but also connection. When she finished, Robert ran a hand over his smooth scalp, turning his head to examine his reflection. "Well, verdict on the skull shape." "Surprisingly normal," Emma said with a small smile. "Almost artistic." They stood side by side in front of the mirror-matching bare heads, the physical embodiment of their shared battle. For the first time, Emma felt like they were truly fighting the same enemy, standing on the same side. That night, Emma found her creative energy returning. In her journal, she created a powerful double portrait, 2 bald heads, one young and female, one older and male, both vulnerable, both determined. Between them, where there had once been distance, she drew a bridge stronger now, more definite than in previous sketches. Beneath the image, she wrote, "Today we chose to be the same." The new treatment protocol left Emma with good days and bad days. On bad days, even lifting her head from the pillow required monumental effort. On good days, she worked in the sunroom studio her father had created. Weak but determined. 6 weeks into the new regimen, Emma woke to find her father in her doorway, a dusty cardboard box in his arms. "Good day or bad day?" he asked cautiously. Emma considered. "Medium day." "What's in the box?" "I was cleaning out the attic and found these." He set the box on her bed. "Thought you might want to see them." Inside were photo albums, dozens of them, meticulously organized and labeled in her mother's handwriting. "Mom's albums," Emma whispered, running her fingers over the embossed covers. "I thought you got rid of these." Robert shook his head. "I couldn't look at them after she died, but I couldn't throw them away either." Emma opened the first album. Her mother smiled up at her, young and vibrant, standing on a beach with her arms outstretched. The salt spray caught in her hair, looked like a halo. "Tulum," Robert said softly. "Our honeymoon." She insisted on staying in this little beach shack instead of a resort. No electricity, just candles and moonlight. Emma turned the page. More photos. Of her parents, young and carefree, drinking from coconuts, snorkeling, kissing beneath a waterfall. "You look happy," she observed. "We were." Robert sat on the edge of the bed. "Your mother found joy everywhere, even in the mundane." They spent the morning paging through the albums. Emma's birth, first steps, family vacations, Halloween costumes. As they progressed, Emma noticed something. "Mum's rarely in these later photos," she said. "She was usually the one taking them," Robert explained. "She loved photography. Did you know that?" Emma shook her head. "You never told me." "She wasn't professional, but she had a good eye. Always had a camera around her neck." He opened a smaller box within the larger one, revealing an old Nikon camera. "This was hers," he said, handing it to Emma. "She took thousands of pictures. Said she was documenting beauty for when she needed reminding it existed." Emma held the camera carefully, imagining her mother's hands adjusting the settings, framing shots, capturing moments. It felt like touching a piece of her. "There's something else." Robert reached into the box and withdrew a worn leather album with no label. "She made this during her treatment." The album was unlike the others, less organized, more visceral. Sarah had documented her cancer journey through photography. Close-ups of 4 lines and medication bottles. Self-portraits showing her progressive hair loss. The changing landscape of her body. But interspersed with these stark images were moments of startling beauty. Sunlight filtering through hospital blinds. A nurse's hands gently changing bandages. Emma asleep beside her in a hospital bed. "She never showed me these," Emma said, her voice thick with emotion. "She showed me once," Robert admitted. "I couldn't handle it. Asked her to put them away." His voice cracked. "Another way I failed her. Failed you both." Emma continued turning pages. Near the end of the album, she found a photo of her 12-year-old self drawing at her mother's bedside. On the opposite page, Sarah had written, "My daughter sees the world as it should be, not merely as it is. This is her greatest gift." "She knew," Emma whispered, tears sliding down her cheeks. "She understood my art before I did." Robert nodded, his own eyes wet. "She understood everything important. I was the blind one." The last photo in the album was of Robert and young Emma, both asleep in chairs beside Sarah's hospital bed. Beneath it, Sarah had written, "My beloveds, be gentle with each other when I'm gone. You're more alike than either of you realize." Emma closed the album, overwhelmed. "Why show me these now?" "Because I've been afraid of the wrong things," Robert said simply. "I've been afraid of losing you like I lost her. But the real tragedy would be if you never knew how much she understood you, how much she believed in your vision." For the first time, Emma allowed her father to hold her as she cried, not just for her mother, but for all the years they'd spent disconnected from each other and from her memory. "She'd be proud of you," Robert murmured against her bare scalp. "So proud." Professor Claudia arrived unannounced one Tuesday afternoon, trailing scarves and jangling bracelets, her energy filling the quiet house. "I have news," she announced, settling at the kitchen table where Emma was sketching. "The University Gallery is hosting an exhibition. Art as Healing, Patient-Created Work." Emma looked up, "And Arnav submitted your cancer journals for consideration." Claudia's expression was triumphant. "They want to feature them. A complete installation." Emma's pencil stilled. "My journals are private. Art isn't meant to be hidden, especially not work this powerful." Claudia placed her hand over Emma's. "You've created something extraordinary through your suffering. Let it speak." "I don't know if I'm ready for people to see that part of me. That's precisely why they need to see it." Claudia's voice softened. "Think about it. The opening is next Friday." After Claudia left, Emma sat with her journal open before her. Pages filled with raw emotion, physical pain, family wounds, Could she really display them for strangers? When Robert returned from work, she told him about Claudia's proposal. "What do you think?" she asked. Robert considered carefully. "I think your work deserves to be seen. But it's your decision, not Claudia's, not mine. Some of it's about you, about us. I know." He met her gaze steadily. "I'm not afraid of the truth anymore." Emma spent the next day reviewing her journals, selecting pieces that told her story without feeling too exposing. By evening, she'd made her decision. "I want to do it," she told her father over dinner. "But I don't think I can attend. The new treatment time too weak." "What if we found a way?" Robert suggested. "Something to manage your energy." The night of the exhibition, Robert wheeled Emma through the University Gallery's side entrance. She wore a silk headscarf Kai had given her and a flowing dress that disguised her thinness. Professor Claudia met them, beaming. "Your installation is the centerpiece," she said, leading them through the space. "We've created an immersive experience." Emma's journal pages had been carefully mounted, creating a narrative path through her cancer journey. Large-format photographs captured the details medicine vials transformed into art objects. The progressive changes in her self-portraits, the evolution of how she depicted her father. "It's intense," Emma murmured, seeing her private pain, displayed so publicly. "It's truthful," Claudia corrected. "Now, I'll leave you to experience it alone before the crowds arrive." As Claudia departed, Emma noticed her father standing motionless before a large display. It featured the page she'd created after their argument about her art supplies. The one where she'd written, "What life are you saving if you take away everything that makes me want to live?" "Dad," she said softly, "we can go if this is too much." Robert shook his head, still staring at the display. "I just never saw it clearly before." He turned to her, eyes glistening. "You've made something beautiful from all this pain." "Not beautiful," Emma disagreed. "Just honest. That's what makes it beautiful." They continued through the installation, Robert pushing her wheelchair slowly, both silent as they revisited Emma's journey, their journey through her art. The final piece was the double portrait she'd created after they'd shaved their heads. Beside it, Claudia had mounted a recent photograph of them, matching bald heads and determined expressions. "Your mother would love this," Robert said quietly. "She always said art should transform, not just represent." The exhibition opened to the public, the gallery quickly filling with students, faculty, and community members. Emma, exhausted but determined, remained in a quiet corner, watching people engage with her most private experiences. Some wept openly. Others stood in contemplative silence. A few approached her, sharing their own cancer stories or those of loved ones. Robert remained by her side, a steady presence. When he noticed her fatigue, he whispered, "Ready to go home?" Emma nodded, then gestured toward a young woman standing before one of the journal pages, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. "Can you give me a minute?" Robert wheeled her over to the woman, then stepped away discreetly. "That's my work," Emma said gently. The woman wiped her eyes. "My mother has lymphoma. I've been so angry at her for being sick, for changing our lives. But your art made me see from her perspective for the first time." Emma reached for the woman's hand. "The anger is normal. So is the fear. Does it get better? The relationship, I mean." Emma glanced across the room at her father, who was speaking earnestly with Professor Claudia. "It can," she said, "if you're both brave enough to face the truth together." The text message came during Emma's afternoon nap. "SOS, bored to death in room 437. Save me from bad TV and hospital jello." Special Kakai had been readmitted 3 weeks after his amputation. Complications, infection, a setback. Emma knew the rhythm by now. "I want to visit him," she told her father. Robert frowned. "You had treatment yesterday. You can barely stand. That's why I need your help. The oncology ward was familiar territory. Now the antiseptic smell, the hushed voices, the muted beeping of monitors. Emma leaned heavily on her father as they made their way to Kai's room. They found him propped up in bed, his missing leg a conspicuous absence beneath the sheets. Despite his pallor, his blue hair was freshly dyed, and spacecraft stickers now covered his four-pole. Collins, he called when he saw them. And Mr. Collins, the dynamic duo. Heard you were terrorizing the nurses, Emma said, easing into the visitor's chair. Someone's got to keep them on their toes. Kai's grin faltered slightly. How are you doing? You look, double quotes, like death warmed over. Emma suggested dryly. I was gonna say fashionably gaunt, but yeah. They laughed, the dark humor a relief. Robert watched their exchange with a mixture of concern and admiration. Where are your parents? He asked Kai. Sent them home to shower and sleep. They've been here 3 days straight. Kai fidgeted with his blanket. The infection's pretty bad. They're talking about more surgery. Emma reached for his hand. That sucks. Yeah, well, statistically, I was due for a complication. Math and all that. Robert stepped forward. Can I get you anything? Food from outside? Books? Kai looked surprised at the offer. Actually, there's this bakery a few blocks away. Makes these red bean buns my mum loves. She won't leave long enough to get them herself. Text me the name, Robert said, already pulling out his phone. I'll bring some back for all of you. After Robert left, Kai turned to Emma. Your dad's different. Less ... robotic, Emma suggested. I was gonna say terrifying, but sure. They spent the next hour drawing together. Kai working on a comic about a one-legged superhero, while Emma sketched his profile, capturing the mixture of youth and weariness in his face. When Robert returned, with the buns, Mr. and Mrs. Chen had also returned. The small room filled with conversation as they shared the food. Emma watched her father chatting easily with the Chens, discussing treatments and insurance battles with the fluency of someone who now spoke the language of serious illness. As they were preparing to leave, Kai's monitor began alarming. His face had gone grey, his breathing labored. Mum, he whispered, suddenly sounding much younger than 17. Mrs. Chen pressed the call button as nurses rushed in. Emma and Robert were ushered outside, where they waited anxiously in the hallway. Dr. Patel appeared, moving quickly toward Kai's room. She nodded briefly to them before disappearing inside. Minutes stretched like hours. Emma leaned against her father, her own weakness momentarily forgotten in her concern for Kai. Finally, Mr. Chen emerged, his face drawn. The infection has spread, he explained quietly. His body is septic. They're moving him to ICU. Will he? Emma couldn't finish the question. Mr. Chen's composure cracked slightly. We don't know. The next 24 hours are critical. As they wheeled Kai out, Mrs. Chen walking alongside the gurney, Emma saw something that stopped her breath. Mrs. Chen bent over her son, whispering in his ear, her tears falling on his face even. As she smiled for him, her love undimmed by fear. In the parking lot, Emma's legs gave out. Without hesitation, Robert scooped her up, carrying her to the car as he had when she was small. Will Kai die? She asked as he drove them home, the question naked and brutal. Robert's hands tightened on the wheel. I don't know, sweetheart. His parents love him so much. It's not fair. No, Robert agreed. It's not. That night, Emma couldn't sleep. She found her father in the kitchen, staring into a cup of cold tea. I keep thinking about Mrs. Chen, he said when Emma joined him. The way she looked at Kai, even when she was terrified. That's how Mom looked at me, Emma said softly. I remember. Robert nodded. Sarah never let her fear overshadow her love. I did. He looked up at Emma, his eyes haunted. I've been so afraid of losing you that I couldn't see you clearly. Not until now. It's not too late, Emma whispered. No, he agreed, reaching for her hand. It's not too late for us. Emma's phone buzzed at 3 a.m. Special K still kicking. Moved out of ICU. Tell your old man the bean buns worked magic. Mama Chanda relief was physical, a weight lifting from her chest. She forwarded the message to her father, knowing he'd be awake too. His response came seconds later. Thank God, get some sleep now. But sleep remained elusive. Dawn found Emma in the sunroom studio, working on a new peace guy in his hospital bed, surrounded by light despite the darkness of his circumstances. Robert appeared in the doorway, 2 mugs of tea in hand. You're up early, couldn't sleep. She accepted the tea gratefully. You, same. He settled into the chair opposite her, looking worn. That piece is beautiful. It's for the Chens. I want them to see how I see Kai, his light, not just his illness. Robert nodded, understanding now in a way he wouldn't have months earlier. They sat in comfortable silence as the sun rose, painting the room gold. I need to tell you something, Robert said finally. Something I should have said a long time ago. Emma set down her brush, sensing the importance of the moment. When your mother got sick, he began, his voice low, I thought I could fix it. More money for treatments, second opinions, clinical trials. I approached her cancer like a business problem, but nothing worked. He stared into his mug, gathering courage. The night before she died, Sarah made me promise to take care of you. Not just financially, but emotionally. To see you, really see you. His voice cracked. I failed her, failed you both. Dad, please, let me finish. He drew a shaky breath. I've been terrified since your mother died. Terrified of loving too deeply, of losing again. When you got sick, that fear, it paralyzed me, made me push you away when you needed me most. Emma watched a tear track down her father's cheek there. First she'd seen since her mother's funeral. I dismissed your symptoms because I couldn't face the possibility of losing you. I tried to control everything because I felt so helpless. I fought your art because it reminded me of Sarah, of everything I couldn't protect. You couldn't have prevented Mom's cancer, Emma said gently. Or mine. I know that intellectually. But in here, he tapped his chest. I still feel like I failed. Like I'm still failing. You're not. Emma reached across the table, taking his hand. You're here now. Really here. I want to be better for you, Emma. I want to be the father you deserve. I don't need perfect, she said. I just need real, honest. Robert squeezed her hand. Can you forgive me? For all the times I couldn't see past my own fear. Emma considered the question seriously. Forgiveness wasn't simple, not for years of emotional distance, not for dismissing her symptoms, not for fighting her art instead of supporting her passion. I'm working on it, she answered truthfully. It's a process, not a moment. Robert nodded, accepting this partial answer with new humility. That's fair, more than fair. But I do love you, Emma added. Even when I'm angry, even when I don't understand you. That's never changed. They sat together as morning light filled the room, the air between them clearer than it had been in years. Not perfect, not healed entirely, but honest at last. Your mother would be proud of you, Robert said finally. Your strength, your art, your compassion. Emma smiled slightly. She'd be proud of you too, Dad, for finally learning to talk about the hard things. Later that day, Emma added a new entry to her journal. Unlike the raw, angry pages from earlier months, this one held a different energy, a sketch of her father's face, vulnerable and open, with the words, Today. He found the courage to be broken in front of me. Maybe that's where healing begins. Dr. Patel's office felt smaller somehow, the chairs closer together as they faced her across the desk. Emma's latest scan results were displayed on the computer screen, shadowy images that only medical eyes could truly interpret. "The current protocol isn't giving us the results we'd hoped for," Dr. Patel explained, her voice calm but serious. "The tumors have shrunk, but not enough." Robert leaned forward. "What are our options?" "There's a clinical trial I'd like to discuss." Dr. Patel turned her screen so they could see the data. "It combines targeted immunotherapy with a new class of drugs that's showing promising results in resistant lymphomas." "Side effects?" Emma asked. "Potentially severe," Dr. Patel admitted. "Increased risk of infection, possibility of lung inflammation, liver toxicity we would need to monitor closely." "Success rates?" Robert's voice was steady. 62% complete remission in cases similar to Emma's. Dr. Patel looked directly at Emma. "It's more aggressive than what we've tried, but given how your cancer is responding, I believe it's our best option." Emma absorbed this information, feeling the weight of the decision. "What happens if we continue with the current treatment?" "We'd likely see a continued partial response, but—" Dr. Patel hesitated. "I'm concerned about the long-term outcome." The unspoken words hung in the air. "You could die." "When would we start?" Emma asked. "There's an opening in the trial next week." "But Emma," Dr. Patel's voice softened, "this needs to be your decision. I can provide the medical facts, but only you can weigh the quality of life considerations." Emma glanced at her father, expecting him to jump in with questions, statistics, his own opinion. Instead, he simply looked at her, waiting. "Dad," she prompted, "what do you think?" "I think," he said carefully, "that you're the one who has to live with whatever comes next. I trust you to make the right choice for yourself." Emma blinked, surprised by this new approach. 6 months ago, he would have taken control, made the decision he thought best without truly consulting her. Now, he was giving her autonomy over her own body, her own future. "I need to think about it," she told Dr. Patel. "Can I let you know tomorrow?" That evening, Emma sat cross-legged on her bed, making a list of pros and cons. The trial offered better odds of survival, but harsher side effects. She might feel worse before she felt better, if she felt better at all. A gentle knock interrupted her thoughts. Robert stood in the doorway, a tray in his hands. "Dinner," he explained. "And this." He set down a leather-bound journal, similar to the one Professor Claudia had given her, but smaller. "What's this?" "Your mother's treatment journal." He sat on the edge of the bed. "She kept it private, but the night before the end, she told me to give it to you if you ever faced something similar." Emma opened the journal with trembling hands. Inside, in her mother's familiar handwriting, were not just medical notes, but deeper reflections about fear and hope, about making hard choices, about finding purpose in pain. On one page, Sarah had written, "I'm not making decisions based on fear anymore. Every choice from now on will be rooted in hope, in possibility, in love for Robert and Emma. Even if time is short, I choose quality over quantity. I choose meaning over safety." Emma closed the journal, overwhelmed. She chose an treatment too, Robert said quietly. "It didn't save her life, but it gave her months of clarity, of purpose. She never regretted it. You never told me that." "I couldn't talk about any of it for a long time." He looked down at his hands. "I regret that now." Emma returned to Dr. Patel's office the next morning, her decision made. "I want to try the clinical trial," she said firmly. Dr. Patel nodded. "I'll submit the paperwork today." As they left the office, Robert asked, "Are you sure about this?" "Yes," Emma said. "Mum helped me decide." The night before her first treatment in the trial, Emma created a new piece in her journal, an image of herself standing at a crossroads. One path shrouded in fog, the other illuminated by a distant light. Above it, she wrote her mother's words. I choose hope. I choose possibility. I choose love. 3 weeks into the clinical trial, Emma experienced what Dr. Patel called a window, a brief period of improved energy between treatments. The side effects were brutal, but they followed a pattern now. Day 1, infusion. Days 2 through 5, misery. Days 6 through 10, gradual improvement. Then the cycle began again. During this unexpected good day, Emma sat at the breakfast table, actually hungry for the first time in weeks. You have color today, Robert observed, setting a plate of scrambled eggs before her. I feel almost human, she agreed. I want to do something normal while I can. What did you have in mind? Emma hesitated. I'd like to visit my studio at school, just for an hour. Robert's instant reaction would once have been protective refusal. Now, he simply asked, when do you want to go? The campus was quiet on Saturday morning. Emma's keycard still worked on the art building, despite her medical leave. The familiar smell of paint, clay, and fixative greeted them as they entered the perfume of creativity that always made Emma feel at home. Her assigned studio space was tucked in a corner of the senior workshop. Robert followed her through the maze of easels and works in progress, taking in the controlled chaos of the art department. This is me, Emma said, stopping before a paint-splattered door with her name on a small label. Inside, the small room was crowded with canvases, sketchbooks, and art supplies. Emma's work covered the wall's figure studies, landscapes, abstract explorations, but dominating the back wall was a series of large canvases that immediately caught Robert's attention. He moved closer, studying the paintings with growing recognition. Mum, Emma finished softly. It's my series about Mum. 7 canvases, each showing Sarah Collins from a different perspective. In one, she laughed on a beach, hair wild in the wind. In another, she sat reading, lamplight, gilding her profile. A third showed her hands kneading bread dough. The fourth captured her sleeping, peaceful despite the hospital setting. But it was the 5th canvas that made Robert stop breathing for a moment. Sarah holding infant Emma, looking down with an expression of such profound love that it seemed to radiate from the paint itself. How did you? These aren't from photographs, he said, his voice unsteady. No, they're from memory, and from feeling. Emma watched her father move from canvas to canvas. I've been working on this series since my first year. It's called Echoes. The 6th canvas showed Sarah and Emma painting together, sunlight streaming through windows behind them. The 7th space held only a blank canvas, the series incomplete. Robert stood silently before the paintings, hands clasped behind his back as if afraid to touch something so precious. This is why, he said finally. Why art school mattered so much. Why you fought so hard. Emma nodded. I needed to understand her, to keep her with me somehow. You've captured her essence. Robert's voice was thick with emotion, not just how she looked, but who she was. He turned to face his daughter, seeing her a Nunut just as his child, but as an artist with profound vision and skill. You're extraordinary, Emma. I wish I'd told you that sooner. Emma moved to stand beside him, studying her own work with fresh eyes. I think the last canvas will be her with both of us. The 3 of us together, even though we never will be again. Robert placed his arm gently around her shoulders, mindful of her fragility. She is with us, though, in you, in these. He gestured toward the paintings, in how we're finally learning to see each other. They stayed another hour, Emma showing him her other projects, explaining techniques and inspirations. Robert listened, intently asking questions that revealed genuine interest rather than polite obligation. Before they left, he stood once more before the Echoes series. "When you're well," he said, "when you finish this series, I'd like to help you exhibit it properly. A gallery showing of your work." "Really?" "Yes. It's time the world saw what I was too blind to see." He smiled at her, a real smile that reached his eyes. "Your mother would be first in line, applauding the loudest." On the drive home, Emma felt a different kind of tired, not the bone-deep exhaustion of illness, but the satisfying weariness that comes from being truly seen and understood. "Thank you," she said simply. Robert glanced over. "For what?" "For finally visiting my world. For trying to understand." He reached across to squeeze her hand gently. "I'm just sorry it took me so long." The waiting room had become familiar territory. Faded magazines, the hushed conversations, the clock that seemed to move too slowly. Robert paced while Emma sketched, capturing the worried faces around them. 3 months into the clinical trial, they were waiting for results of Emma's latest scans. The physical signs were encouraging. Her energy had improved. The night sweats had lessened, and she'd gained back a few precious pounds. But they'd learned not to trust surface appearances. Dr. Patel appeared in the doorway. "Emma, Robert, come on back." In the consultation room, Dr. Patel pulled up the scan images on her computer. Unlike previous appointments, she was smiling. "The results are very promising," she began. "We're seeing significant reduction in tumor size across all sites. Over 70% reduction overall." Emma stared at the screen, trying to see what Dr. Patel saw, the shadows in her body retreating. "What does that mean exactly?" Robert asked, his voice carefully controlled. "It means the trial protocol is working," Dr. Patel explained. "If we continue to see this response, we could be looking at complete remission within the next few months." Emma felt lightheaded suddenly, but not from weakness, from hope, that dangerous emotion she'd kept carefully contained. "So, I'm getting better?" she asked, needing to hear it plainly. "Yes, Emma. You're responding extremely well to the treatment." Dr. Patel's smile widened. "We still have a long road ahead, but this is the turning point we've been waiting for." In the car, Robert kept glancing at Emma as if she might disappear. "How are you feeling?" he asked for the 3rd time. "Scared to believe it," she admitted. "Like if I get too hopeful, I'll jinx it somehow." Robert nodded, understanding. "When your mother was sick, every good report felt like holding my breath. Underwater, I was afraid to exhale." "Exactly." Emma looked out the window at the autumn trees, their leaves turning brilliant colors as if celebrating with her. "But I want to believe. I want to plan for after." "Then let's plan," Robert said, decisively. "What's the first thing you want to do when you're stronger?" "Finish my series about Mum. Go back to classes. Visit Kai. He's starting physical therapy with his prosthetic next week." She hesitated. "And I want to make our house feel like home." Again, Robert glanced at her. "What do you mean?" "It's been so sterile since Mum died. No color, no art, no real life." Emma turned to face him. "I'd like to bring some of that back, if that's okay." Robert was quiet for a moment. "I think I'd like that too." The following week, Emma felt strong enough to help Robert clear out the unused formal dining room space that had gathered dust since Sarah's death. "What are you thinking for this room?" he asked, moving chairs into the hallway. "A proper studio," Emma said, "with north-facing light from those windows. Somewhere I can work without climbing stairs on bad days." Robert surveyed the space with new eyes. "It's perfect. We could install proper track lighting, storage for your supplies, maybe an easel station." By the window, Emma watched her father transform before her from reluctant participant to enthusiastic planner. He measured windows, researched art studio designs online, and called a contractor about installing a sink for washing brushes. Over the next few weeks, as Emma's health continued to improve, the dining room metamorphosed into a light-filled studio. Robert installed shelving himself, proudly showing Emma the YouTube tutorials he'd followed. He found her mother's old record player in the attic and set it up in one corner, remembering how Sarah had always painted to music. On Emma's good days, they worked together, organizing supplies, arranging furniture, hanging inspiration boards. On her bad days, Robert continued alone, surprising her with progress when she felt strong enough to come downstairs. The final touch was a gifter, professional-grade easel delivered on a rainy Tuesday morning. "This is too much," Emma protested, running her hands over the gleaming wood. "No," Robert said simply. "It's not enough, but it's a start." That evening, Emma set up her first canvas on the new easel, final painting in her Echoes series. As twilight gathered outside, Robert brought her tea, then lingered, watching her preliminary sketches take shape. "What is it?" Emma asked, noticing his expression. "You look like her when you work," he said softly. "The same focus, the same light in your eyes." Emma smiled, touching her hair that had begun to grow back in soft patches. "Think it'll come back curly like hers?" "Probably." Robert sat in the reading chair they'd placed near the easel. "She'd love this room, you know. This is what she always wanted for you." "For us," Emma corrected gently. "She wanted us to find our way back to each other." Outside, rain tapped against the windows, but inside was warmth and light and the quiet. Companionship of two people finally learning to heal together. The gallery buzzed with conversation, wine glasses clinking as people moved from piece to piece. Emma stood in a quiet corner, watching the crowd engage with her work. Her hair had grown back in soft curls, shorter than before, but framing her face in a way that highlighted her striking resemblance to her mother. Nervous, Robert appeared beside her, offering a glass of sparkling water. "A little," she admitted. "It's different from the hospital exhibition. More ... deliberate." "They love it." Robert nodded toward a group of students clustered around one of her paintings, as they should. The exhibition, titled Remission, featured two distinct series. The first documented Emma's cancer journey, selected pages from her journals, portraits of fellow patients, including Kai, studies of hospital scenes transformed through her unique perspective. The second was the completed Echoes series, with Sarah Collins at its heart. The final painting of Echoes held the place of honor on the back wall. Sarah, Robert, and Emma, together in the newly created home studio. Sarah's presence rendered as a warm light surrounding them. Not quite solid, but undeniably present. Professor Claudia approached, resplendent in a flowing emerald dress. "My brilliant Emma," she said, embracing her former student. "What did I tell you? Art heals. You were right." Emma smiled. "As usual. And you?" Claudia turned to Robert. "You've come a long way from the stern father who frowned at my bracelets." Robert laughed, the sound easy and natural now. "I've had excellent teachers." He glanced at Emma with unmistakable pride. A commotion near the entrance drew their attention. Kai appeared, navigating the crowd with practiced ease on his carbon fiber prosthetic leg, his blue hair now streaked with purple. "Make way for the muse," he called dramatically. Artist's best friend coming through. Emma moved to greet him, their embrace fierce and familiar. Against the odds, they had both survived, changed, scarred, but alive. "Your paintings are blowing minds, Collins," Kai said, stepping back to survey the exhibition. "Especially the ones about the super handsome, charming cancer patient who inspired you." "Those are everyone's favorites," Emma agreed solemnly. "Your modesty shines through." As the evening progressed, Emma found herself sharing the story behind different pieces. No longer shy about the raw emotion they contained, art students asked about her techniques. Cancer survivors thanked her for capturing experiences they'd struggled to express. Medical students commented on the humanity her work brought to clinical settings, Near closing time, Emma found her father standing before the hospital scenes, deep in thought. "Penny, for your thoughts?" she asked, slipping her arm through his. "I was just thinking about how far we've come." He turned to face her. "Not just your health, though God knows I'm grateful for that every day, but you and me." Emma nodded, understanding completely. "We had to break before we could heal properly." "Your mother would be proud of you," Robert said. "Of your art, your courage, your heart." "She'd be proud of you too," Emma replied. "The man you've become, the father you are now." Later, as they gathered Emma's things to leave, a young woman approached hesitantly. "Excuse me," she said. "I just wanted to thank you. My father was diagnosed with lymphoma last month, and we've been struggling. Your work helped me understand what he might be feeling, what he can't say." Emma reached for the woman's hand. "It's scary, I know, but keep talking to each other. Even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. That's the most important medicine," Robert added quietly. "The connection between you." As they drove home, Emma rolled down her window, letting the spring air rush over her face. Her body still bore the marks of her battle, the port scar beneath her collarbone, the lingering fatigue that Dr. Patel said might never completely disappear, the 3-month checkups that would continue for years. But she was alive, connecting. The cancer had nearly killed her, and her father's words had once hurt more deeply than any physical pain. But they had found their way back to each other, back to the truth of who they were meant to be together. "Dad," Emma said, as they turned onto their street, "I've been thinking about Mum's old camera. What about it? I'd like to learn how to use it, combine photography with my painting, create something new." Robert smiled, the moonlight catching the silver in his close-cropped hair. "She'd love that, the torch being passed." "Not passed," Emma corrected gently. "Shared. Like her light still shining through both of us." At home, Emma added the final entry to her cancer journal, not an image of illness or pain, but a sketch of the gallery that night, filled with people connecting through art, through shared humanity, through the bridge that creativity builds across even the deepest chasms. Beneath it, she wrote, "Some wounds never fully heal, but they can transform us into something stronger, something more compassionate, something true." The cancer nearly killed me. My father's words once hurt more deeply, but in the breaking, we found a new way to be whole.